68,000 miles. One V-twin completely wiped out from the inside. The owner looked at me and asked the same question I hear every single week. How does that even happen? It never even threw a warning light. One question told me everything. Do you ever check your primary fluid? No, I figured that stuff was sealed for life. That one assumption cost him just under $5,000. Here's the thing about V-twins. They don't fail loud. They fail quiet. And there are 8 everyday habits I see wreck these engines over and over in my shop, all leading up to one mistake that does more damage faster than everything else on this list combined. Riders always say the same thing afterward. I had no idea. Let's fix that right now, starting at number 8. Number 8, shifting into gear. While you're still rolling, this is a habit almost every rider picks up without even noticing. You roll up to a stop, kick it down into first a half second before you're fully stopped, ready to go the moment the light changes. Feels efficient, feels smooth. What's actually happening is a shock load slamming straight into the clutch hub and the transmission splines. Components engineered for steady engagement, not half-gear impacts while the bike's still in motion. Every one of those little hits hammers the clutch dogs and wears the splines down a fraction more than the last time. Early on, you'll get a faint pop or a slight slip when you let the clutch out. Ignore that, and it turns into a progressive slip that only gets worse from there. The eventual bill is a clutch pack and hub service, usually a few $100s in parts and labor. The fix costs nothing. Come to a full stop before you shift into first. Cheapest insurance policy you'll ever buy for your drivetrain. Number 7, coasting in neutral on long descents. This one feels almost responsible. You're heading down a long grade, so you drop it into neutral, thinking you're saving fuel or giving the engine a break. On a modern V-twin, that habit actually throws away a safety net that's built into the bike. When you coast in gear with the throttle closed, the ECU triggers deceleration fuel cutoff at low RPM and near zero throttle. The injector stops spraying entirely, so you're already saving fuel without doing anything. More importantly, engine braking keeps the whole drivetrain loaded and smooth. Drop it into neutral, and you lose that damping completely. Then, when you re-engage a gear at the bottom of the hill, the sudden torque spike hammers the clutch and friction plates all at once. First symptom is usually a sharp clunk, or a clutch that starts feeling glazed sooner than it should. Fix. Stop coasting in neutral. Let engine braking and the ECU do the job they were designed to do. Number 6, twisting the throttle before the oil wakes up. This is the fastest way to grind down your top end without a single warning light ever coming on. Most riders are itching to go. Fire it up, hear the engine settle into that idle, and twist the throttle before the oil has had a real chance to circulate. Here's what's actually happening mechanically. On a cold start, the oil is thick and slow moving, so the pump can actually show a high pressure reading right away. But that number is misleading. Thick oil takes real time to work its way through every passage and reach the far ends of the engine, like the rocker arms and valve train up top. For those first several seconds, parts of the engine are running with a thinner protective film than they'd have once everything's warm and flowing. Hammer the throttle before the engine reaches proper operating temperature, and you're forcing metal surfaces to work harder than they should before they're properly lubricated, scuffing pistons, glazing rings, and shaving years off the life of your top end. The aftermath is ugly. Scuffed pistons, scored cylinder walls, and a top-end rebuild that runs well into 4 figures, seemingly out of nowhere. The fix is dead simple. Let the bike idle for 30 to 45 seconds, then ride it easy until the oil actually comes up to operating temperature. That one habit alone can double the working life of your engine. Number 5, lugging the engine in top gear. This one sneaks up on long-distance riders especially. You're cruising along in top gear, maybe 50 to 55 miles per hour, and you crack the throttle open without downshifting first. It feels efficient, like you're letting the engine do less work. What's actually happening underneath is a torque spike pounding the cam bearings and lifters every single time you load the engine below its efficient RPM band. Most manufacturers publish a recommended shift range for exactly this reason, usually somewhere in the low to mid 2000s RPM under load. Drop below that range and lug the engine, and the V-twin's torque curve actually spikes instead of smoothing out. You'll feel it as a knocking or chugging sensation under load. Over time, those repeated hits start to oval out the cam bushings and chew up the bearings. Ignore it long enough, and you're looking at a full cam and bearing job, a repair that can run into the low thousands. The fix: if you're lugging under load in top gear, downshift. One habit change, years added to your bottom end. Quick break here. If you're actually trying to get your V-twin past that 100,000 mile mark, instead of just hoping for the best, I've put together a complete longevity handbook covering oil interval schedules, primary and belt service windows, and the RPM habits that genuinely extend engine life. Links in the description if you want the full breakdown instead of guessing. Number 4, never checking your primary fluid. This is the silent killer that too many riders shrug off completely. Most manufacturers call for a primary fluid change on a defined mileage interval, but a huge number of owners skip it, assuming the primary is sealed for life or that it's just a clutch bath that doesn't really matter. Ignore that service interval, and what starts out as clean fluid slowly turns into a gritty mess. Clutch dust, chain wear particles, and bearing shavings all swirling around together. That abrasive slurry eats away at the clutch basket and chews up bearing surfaces from the inside. You might not notice anything until you hear a whine or feel a notchy clutch pull, and by that point you're looking at a rebuild that can run well over $1,000. A 5-minute inspection at every oil change is all it takes. Pop the cover, swipe the magnet. If you see metal fuzz, it's time for fresh fluid. $30 in fluid beats a 4-figure repair every single time. Number 3, idling in gear at long stops. This is a habit most riders pick up in city traffic or at long red lights. The logic makes sense on the surface. Stay in first gear, clutch pulled in, ready to roll the instant the light changes. But every minute you sit there idling in gear, the rear cylinder is cooking in its own heat with almost no airflow moving past it. Owners who've installed oil temperature gauges on air-cooled and oil-cooled V-twins routinely see idle oil temperatures climb past 250 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes higher, after just 10 or 15 minutes sitting still. The rear cylinder in particular can run noticeably hotter than the front. That extra heat doesn't just disappear, it oxidizes the oil, forming varnish and thinning out the protective film that keeps valve seats and guides healthy. Over time, you'll see sticky lifters, softened valve seats, and a clutch that starts feeling gummy in its action. The fix: if you're stopped for more than about 60 seconds, kill the engine. For heavy commuters, an aftermarket fan-assisted oil cooler is a worthwhile investment. It can drop temperatures noticeably and buy you real years of engine life. Heat is silent, but it never stops working against you. Number 2, mixing or substituting the wrong fluids. This is a chemistry mistake that can wreck a V-twin faster than almost anything else on this list, and it usually happens by accident. These engines are built around a strict rule: the right oil in the engine, the right fluid in the primary, and the right gear oil in the transmission. Each one is engineered for a completely different job. Engine oil is loaded with detergents and friction modifiers that keep the top end clean, but pour that same oil into a wet clutch primary, and it will glaze the clutch plates within just a few thousand miles. Transmission oil is built for high-pressure gear mesh, not for friction plates. It only takes one wrong fill to start real damage. In the real world, a clutch can begin slipping as early as 5,000 miles after the wrong fluid goes in. The fix isn't cheap once the damage is done. A new clutch plate kit plus labor can easily run several $100s. The habit to build is simple. Always use the correct fluid in the correct compartment, every single time. Mixing fluids to save a trip to the parts store is a shortcut straight to the workbench. Number 1, the mistake that wrecks everything else on this list. This is the one, the stupid mistake that does more damage faster than every other habit combined, and it's almost always self-inflicted. Skipping the ECU tune after a performance modification. Here's exactly how it plays out. You bolt on a full exhaust system and a high flow intake, thinking you're waking the bike up, but you leave the factory fuel map completely untouched. The stock ECU was calibrated for the restriction of the factory setup. Open up both the intake and exhaust without adjusting the fuel map, and your air-fuel ratio can climb well past the safe range, sometimes into the high teens under load. That means hotter combustion temperatures, and it doesn't take long before the valve seats start eroding under that extra heat. We've seen bikes lose real, measurable horsepower after a mod like this with no tune to match. Not because the parts were bad, but because the fueling went lean. The owner usually assumes it's just a change in sound or feel, while the real damage is happening quietly at the valve seats the entire time. By the time the bike finally loses compression, the repair bill lands well into 4 figures for valve seat resurfacing, plus downtime waiting on parts. All of that avoidable with a single aftermarket tuner that costs a few $100s. A proper tune brings the air-fuel ratio back to a safe range, restores the horsepower that was lost, and, most importantly, keeps the top end alive instead of slowly cooking it from the inside. The lesson is simple. Anytime you change the intake or exhaust on a V-twin, the ECU needs a fresh map to match. Tuning isn't just about chasing more horsepower, it's about not baking your engine from the inside out without ever knowing it's happening. If you want your V-twin to see 150,000 miles instead of limping to 70,000 with a wrecked top end, do not skip the tune. It is, without question, the single stupidest mistake you can make on one of these engines, because it's the one where the rider thinks they're upgrading the bike and they're actually destroying it. The pattern behind all 8. Look back across this whole list, and there's one thing every single item has in common. None of these engines fail with a warning. No dash light, no sudden noise on day 1. Every single failure on this list started as something completely invisible. A faint pop, a slightly higher idle temperature, an air-fuel ratio a few points leaner than it should be, and by the time it became audible or visible, real damage was already done. It's never really the engine that's weak. A well-built V-twin is capable of well past 100,000 miles with almost nothing going wrong internally. What actually wrecks these engines is a pattern of small shortcuts and skip checks that quietly compound over tens of thousands of miles until one day the bill lands all at once. Every rider who sat across from me after one of these failures says the exact same thing. I had no idea. The goal of this video is simple. Now you do. Check your primary fluid. Warm the engine up before you lean on it, downshift instead of lugging it, and if you ever bolt on pipes or an intake, get it tuned. That last one alone will save you more money than everything else on this list combined. If this kind of breakdown is useful, subscribe. Next up, we're covering the 5 cheapest things you can do right now to actually bulletproof your V-twin before any of this becomes your problem.